It's now my joy and pleasure to introduce our guest speaker today. Pastor Daryl Craig Sr. is a native of Buffalo, New York, and a longtime resident of Erie, Pennsylvania. He is married to Tamika Craig, who is with him today, beautiful yellow dress, and has 6 children, one of whom is with him today as well, and 7 grandchildren. Pastor Craig has been serving in ministry since 2000 and is currently the senior pastor at the House of Prayer Erie Church in Erie, Pennsylvania, formerly the House of Prayer Missionary Baptist Church. He's well known and highly recognized in Erie for his expansive community outreach work. Pastor Craig is the founder and executive director of Creative Community Connectors Ministry, which offers services including the Blue Coats Youth Nonviolence Initiative, Flipside Gun Violence Program, Community Safety Services, Reentry Mentoring Program, and Youth Court Advocacy. He has won awards and accolades for his nonprofit organization called the Blue Coats Youth Nonviolence Initiative, which provides volunteers to teach young people nonviolence and support them in overcoming poverty, truancy, family strife, and violence. Pastor Craig also serves on the Erie Community Police Relationship Council, Unified Erie Advisory Board, and Community Advisory Board of Erie School District, and is a member of United Clergy of Erie, Pennsylvania. I'm so glad you found time to be with us. Please join me in giving a warm Unity Renaissance welcome to Pastor Daryl Craig. Welcome, brother.
Thank you. I got to tell you, I'm nervous. I'm glad to be nervous, though. That lets me know I haven't gone crazy and start relying on myself yet. So it is indeed my great pleasure and honor and privilege to be here before you today. I don't take this for granted whatsoever. I greet you, namaste, a word taught to me by one of your fellow congregants, my Aunt Evelyn Hurd, who was so excited to share that word with me. And it was amazing because she called to share that word with me 3 days after my own pastor, the Honorable Robert L. Gaines, had just shared it with us. And so the harmony of that moment was just amazing. But the word truly speaks to everything that we're doing here right now and the way I endeavor to live my life, and I believe that I can say that safely for everybody here and plenty others, and that we would acknowledge the value and the God in each and every one that comes before us, because, as it was spoken earlier, the divine light abides with us all. You know, sometimes we don't always know that or exhibit it, but that doesn't make it not so. So anyway, my assignment is to tell you a little bit about me first, and then segue somewhere around 10 minutes later into a message. But I have to do some housekeeping because I'm sure that there are those at home that are watching and family members, so certainly the God in me sends honor to the God in you that may be viewing today at home. Certainly I'm grateful for my home church, House of Prayer Erie. One of the most amazing experiences I've ever had in my life was to be honored that they selected me to be their lead pastor at that place. I didn't desire it. In fact, I thought I had some say-so in that. I really did. But as this story of my life unfolds, maybe we'll see how all that came about. So anyway, I was born many years ago I just recently turned 66 years old, May 13, and I was born the sixth child of 9 to Lucille and Francis Craig in Buffalo, New York. And it was one of the greatest times and experiences of my life. I had 4 big brothers, a big sister, and a full house of siblings and 2 loving and caring parents. And every season of that time was the most incredible season, like Christmas. I remember they had to designate certain areas of the room for presents because there would be so many presents under the tree because there were so many kids looking for presents under the tree. And so everything that we did just seemed like it was monumental and just the most fantastic thing ever. And one day, out of the blue, we awakened to get ready for school, and all of that was gone. Without going into too much detail for the sake of time, my mother was missing, and nobody had a clue. And that day, my world changed forever. The older kids were taken out of the house the same day, and it was me, my 2 sisters, younger sisters, and my baby brother, who had to be about 18 months old at the time. And in one fell swoop, I went from being that middle child with all that protection and covering and guidance and just, being surrounded to being the oldest child in the house, the protector, the teacher, and soon, not long after, the provider. And it seemed like our life just plummeted downhill within a matter of days. We lived in a house that we owned. We owned 2 cars and a boat. We were doing all right for a family. All of that stuff started disappearing. Maybe 30 days later, I find myself sleeping on somebody's couch up over a bar, not understanding what's taking place, what happened, or what's going to happen. And I tell you this to put you there in my life because you wanted to know about me, how I got here. Not knowing at the time, I had just plunged into a worship experience that I would remain in for almost 30 years, maybe longer. And that worship experience was the worship of fear. I was the most fearful child. When I look back, I was afraid of everything. I never knew what was going to happen next, what was coming out of the blue next. Were we going to eat? What were we going to wear? It was horrific. But I didn't have time to allow the fear to paralyze me because I had 2 sisters and a brother that needed me. And I had a father who was struggling, trying to figure this out, who needed me. And I didn't know that at the time, but I became the best helpmeet to him that I could be. And so as their life begins to unfold with so many ups and downs, I look back now and I know how I made it, but I often wondered, how did I make it through that? So after being relocated from our own home into an unknown neighborhood, and back then in the city of Buffalo, it was very, very heavy gang affiliations going on. And whatever neighborhood you lived in, that gang ran that neighborhood. And so we happened to wind up in what's called the Fruit Belt District of Buffalo, New York. And there was a couple gangs there, but the primary one was called the Fruit Belt Mad Dogs. And they ran that neighborhood. And so I had to literally fight every day because we were the new kids on the block, and somebody always wanted to test you, wanted to try you. And I had 2 little sisters and a little brother that I had to protect. And I didn't know it at the time, but I had became the head of my own household at the age of 9, never had a clue. There were times when my sisters, my brother, and myself would try to make bread out of water and oil. And we'd eat that 3 times a day. I didn't know how to ask for help. I didn't know who to ask for help. I just knew we had to survive. So that shaped and molded my thinking about the world. Now, there's a whole lot of details that I have to leave out in order to get where we're going. I was asked to give a title for the topic that I would talk about, and it kind of caught me off guard because it was so far back that they were asking me. I hadn't even given it any thought. I had accepted the invite, but I hadn't given a lot of thought. I'm praying and I'm asking for the Spirit to guide me and lead me to a topic. So when Alicia called, I just said off the top of my head, out of the blue. And it's because it's always a subject that's marinating with me, out of the blue. And it has a lot to do with my ministry being the Blue Colts. I own a blue car. We have a cat named Blue, right? So somehow I'm going to try to tie this wordplay blue into this subject. And I brought some signs. I actually forgot them there in the back of the van and the different initiatives that we've launched. But every one of the signs is blue and white, right? So my life progressed like that, and it was a continual downward spiral, and somebody introduced me to drugs in school, and I found out that if I took these drugs, and I'll never forget when I was introduced, I was told, take this, it'll make you feel good. And boy, did I want to feel good after being sidelined like that and sucker punched like that. I needed to feel good, you know. And so I took them, and she gave me some pills, and they did make me feel good. And I found out there were substances available that if you took these substances, you could change the way you feel. Didn't do a whole lot to help your thoughts, but it could help you cope with those thoughts. And so I began this long journey into drug addiction and in and out of prison, the gang life, you name it. And it ravaged me, devastated me, tore my life up for a great many years. And I experienced every type of degradation you could possibly think of. In my heart, I was the worst of the worst. And every now and then, though, out of the blue, I would get a recollection of some of the things that my mother and my father had tried to teach us. First of all, that there was a God. There was a God. Now, I didn't think much of this God because he didn't seem to show up when I needed him most and when it mattered the most in that early childhood. But I would oftentimes find myself in so much trouble I had no choice but to pray to him, even though I kind of didn't, you know, we weren't too cool. But I'd call him if I thought it would help in that moment. And so a lot of things, as I said earlier, took place out of the blue. And I had these experiences that were steadily but slowly but surely marching me towards this point in my life. I would meet somebody on the path who would remind me there was a God. I would meet somebody on the path who would remind me that even though I was hurting, even though I felt miserable, even though it seemed like I had the most miserable life of any human being, that there was something in me of value. And it would always come at a point in time where I needed to hear that most. And my life would continue on like that. And every now and then I'd believe it long enough to store something up that I would later use as I use it today. not knowing that this is what I was doing, not knowing that all this hurt, all this brokenness, all this pain was training me. I was being prepared for something, and I didn't quite get that because I didn't have the patience to sit still long enough and understand what the people were trying to tell me. I thought I knew everything. I had made it this far on my own, and I'm a survivor, and I only need you for whatever it is I can get out of you for this moment, so I'll listen to your speech, but I ain't taking it with me. You know, whatever I can get out of this moment until the next moment, that's what I'll do. But I thought I wasn't listening, but those deposits were being made out of the blue. And so, after getting to a point in my life where I was sick of me, they call it sick and tired of being sick and tired. I say I was just sick of me. I decided that I was going to go home to Buffalo. I was in Erie, Pennsylvania, where I did most of my dirt and wrecked most of my life for the latter stages of my life at the time. And I get back to Buffalo, and I got this plan. I'm not going to use drugs no more, but I sure am going to sell them. And so I'm going to hook up with some of my former friends who are all big dope dealers, and these guys get tons of money. And I'm going to get enough drugs, and I'm going to build this enterprise up so I have enough drugs to go back to Erie, Pennsylvania, and take over the drug trade. That was my plan. So out of the blue, I jump on the bus and I go back to Buffalo, and it dawns on me that I've been in a drug stupor for so long, I don't have anybody's phone number. I don't know where anybody lives except for my older brother. And I only have the clothes on my back, which is a flannel shirt and a T-shirt under that, and it's like 20 below zero. In the city of Buffalo, New York, with that wind coming out of Canada, you don't even have a clue. Lou Rawls had a song, some of the musicians probably know what I'm talking about, called The Almighty Hawk. Talking about the wind in Chicago and how it would cut you. So I was pretty cut up. So I put my little garbage bag in the bus station locker, and I went looking for one of my buddies who I just knew was sitting on tons of dope and had tons of money, and he was going to be happy to see me because he hadn't seen me in 12 to 15 years, and he was going to give me enough to get started and give me enough money. I'd get me a hotel room, and I was going to build this grand plan. And I took off walking. And I remembered he and his wife had just had a house built close to downtown Buffalo from the ground. I mean, this guy was that guy. And I only had been there once, so I couldn't remember what the street was. So I walked up and down the streets in that general area, trying to remember this house. And I got to this street, Spring Street, and I'm thinking this might be the place. And I walked down to the end, and I didn't recognize the house. And so I turned around, and I was kind of dejected, and I'm walking, and you can hear the snow crunching under my feet. And there was this big white SUV coming down the street. And I moved out the way so it could get by, and I heard it stop. And I turned around, and I looked at the license plate, and it was a vanity plate. But the name on the vanity plate was familiar to me. It was that friend's wife. And she recognized me, and she jumped out the truck. Daryl, oh my God. And she took one look at me, and you could see that life had beat the living daylights out of me. And you could see the concern in her eye. And she was like, the house is right here. Come on in and get warm. And I'm like, yes. Okay, here we go. This grand plan is going to happen. I'm going to go in this house. She's going to call my friend. He's going to come, and he's going to bring some money. He's going to give me a package of dope, and I'm going to start this life and become this great dope dealer. And I said, so where's your husband at? She said, he's at church. I said, huh? What is he doing there? He's dropping somebody off? What's going on? She called the church. He left the church. He came and got me. He said, don't move. where you going to stay? I said, take me to my brother's house, which was the only house I really knew where it was at. And he took me to my brother's house. And I'm thinking I'll do anything to stay off these drugs, even if I have to sleep at the city mission. I didn't know how I was going to be welcome at my brother's house because my life had been a mess for so long and nobody wanted to see me coming. But to my surprise, they were happy to see me. They invited me in and they offered me a key immediately. Here's a key to the house. Where's your bag? Come on in. They knew. I never even got a chance to turn. They could see it. I was beaten and they knew that I needed help. So that friend that dropped me off said, I'll be by to get you in the morning. So I'm thinking he's going to show up around 10 o'clock, and then he's going to tell the truth. He's not really in the church. This is just a smoke screen. And we're going to get this drugs. 6 o'clock that morning, we hear a horn outside, and it's him. So I'm like, wow, he's excited, you know. I get in the car, strap myself in the front seat. He turns and he looks at me and says, you know what, Daryl? If we don't use any drugs today, we got a chance. What? If we don't use any drugs today, we got a chance. And the first thing we need to do is get you a job. Okay. All right. Something's going on here. So this went on for like a month. He showed up every morning at 6 o'clock, and he said the same thing every morning at 6 o'clock about not using no drugs. And we found a job. He found me a job. And one day, not after long, he found this job. He said, well, we're going over another friend's house because he has a hookup for the Nextel phones with the two-way radios. I said, here it is. We're going to go in this house. This guy's got a box of cell phones. And they got a ton of dope on the table, and this is where I'm going to get my drugs and my money from and start my drug career as a big drug dealer. And we pull up to this guy, our friend's house, and he has a brand new house built from the ground. And I know this is it, so I don't go in. I sit in the car because I'm waiting to be invited. And when I get invited, I'm going to come in and I'm going to see this movie scene with drugs and money and guns and all this stuff there. And sure enough, I hear a voice, Daryl, why are you sitting in the car? Come in. And I run in, and I'm excited. And this friend is standing in the middle of the floor with a terry cloth bathrobe on and holding a Bible. You guys aren't hearing me. From that day on, things begin to unfold very rapidly. This guy had a ministry around the corner from the house that he was living in, and it was one of the most important outreach ministries in the city of Buffalo, and he was looking for guys like me to help guys like me. And the first thing he did was give me a business card and say, I want you to show up Monday. I got a job for you. And I went down there Monday, and I realized that my drug career was going to be on hold for a while, and this was going to be a little bit more difficult than what I thought. So fast forward, I get involved in this ministry, and I find out I love it. I love it. I love it. I mean, I take to it like a fish to water. And what we would do is go out in some of the worst neighborhoods in Buffalo, and we would go on the corner to some of the so-called killers and gangsters and thugs, and we would apologize to them for not having been there for them, because they were 20 years, 15 years younger than us, and we declared that our generation had dropped the ball, and we got so caught up in doing our thing that we forgot about those coming behind us. And those young men would look at us like we had lost our minds, but they would be interested because why are we apologizing to them? We had nothing to do with their choices, so they thought. But it worked. And we were apologizing for not being there for them, but what I found out, that in my apology, I wasn't apologizing to them, I was apologizing to myself. I was atoning. Didn't understand the word atonement. And so I got heavily involved into the church. And I didn't miss a church service. If they opened those doors, I was there. Prayer, whatever. Watch night service, Bible study, men's group, church meeting. We're going to clean up the parking lot, whatever it was, I was there every day. But there was still something missing. There was something missing. I wasn't growing internally. It was a great platform, but I was not growing. I wasn't being fulfilled because that nagging, annoying hurt and damage that had been done to me by what happened in my childhood had never been resolved. It had never been dealt with. And so out of the blue, the pain would come. And even though I never went back to the drugs, thank God, I never went back to the crime, thank God, I was never really quite happy. I was never really quite content. And so by that time, I had developed a great employment record, and I took a job in retail, and this guy turned out to be one of the greatest friends that I have even right now. He had a store in Erie. He did hip-hop clothing. He had retail outlets, and he had one in Erie that was struggling, and he asked if I would go back to Erie and take that store and turn it around, because I excelled in sales. I loved to talk, and that's what I did. I became the best clothes seller in the world. I could sell a pair of jeans, boy, like nobody's business, right? I never sold any more dope, but I sold a lot of stuff. The good thing was it was all legal. So out of the blue, I wind up being the manager of one of the biggest hip-hop clothing stores in the city of Buffalo. In fact, I became the manager of the biggest store in that chain. In fact, they featured me on the front page of the business section, and I got to meet the governor, and all of this stuff came out of the blue. None of this was part of my plan. None of this. So when they asked me to come to Erie and turn this store around, I took the challenge. I came back to Erie because I felt responsible, because the guy who was managing it was a guy I had trained, and he wasn't taking care of the business. So I moved back to Erie, and I take over this location in the Mill Creek Mall. And as I said, I'm still not quite comfortable in my walk with God and my understanding of God, and I'm not quite fulfilled. Just stuff is not sitting right. The more involved I get in the church, the more I'm finding things that seems like the world: division, jealousy, competition, and then on some occasions, some stuff that just outright didn't make any sense at all, and actually had me wondering if this was some cult stuff, you know? So not long after moving back to Erie, I go to church because I don't want to be alone, because I did a lot of drug damage to myself in Erie. I go to this church on 8th and Parade to keep myself occupied, and there's this young man sitting behind the pulpit, and I'm thinking he's just warming up for the pastor, that he's going to introduce some old guy that's going to come out the side door with a long robe on. And turns out this young man was the pastor, and every word that came out his mouth pertained to my life, to the way I was feeling, to the way I was thinking. It was like too precise to be an accident. So I wound up coming back, and I joined this church, and I formed a connection with this young man. And this young man saw my gift, and he had the same desire that I had. I wanted to come out of the church. I wanted to take God to the people. I felt that it was the church's responsibility to get fed on Sunday and get to work on Monday and not stay behind the doors. How can I walk past these kids on the corner day in and day out and not even speak to them? How could I walk past these kids and seeing the storm clouds of homicide and murder hanging over the city of Erie because there were groups moving in from all over the country, Buffalo, Cleveland, Chicago, Detroit, and violence was going up. We started hearing gunshots, and you could see the handwriting on the wall. And it seemed like nobody was saying anything. But when I had shared this with this young pastor, not only did he feel me, he said, well, what are we going to do? And when I described a mode of operation we could take in hand, he felt it. When I talked about leaving out of the church and going to the community and going to these young people and offering them hope and offering them a different way of life, he felt it and said, yes, let's do it. But first, you got to do something for me. He said, you're talking about stopping the violence. I just need an after-school program. So I developed that after-school program for him in less than a week's time. And we got it announced, and we asked for volunteers, and out of the blue, the woman that's sitting behind you volunteered for this after-school program. I didn't know she was my wife at the time. So we got that done, and the pastor says, how am I doing on time? The pastor says, I just wanted you to know you have to put something in prevention in place before you go and stop the violence. It's like putting a Band-Aid on an open gunshot wound. If you don't stop the bleeding first, it's going to get infected. So anyway, we put this after-school program together, and we called it New Visions. And when I went to open up the building, there was a woman coming in the door with 3 children, and it was Tamika. And she was the only one that came, and then somebody else showed up with 2 kids. So we went and got these kids 5 pizzas. We went and bought 5 pizzas. And the neighborhood kids seen us going in the door with the pizzas. We let them come in and get a couple slices. The next week, 47 children showed up. So boom, it was a success. So what had begun to happen was a lot of things started unfolding in my life, things that I wasn't prepared for, things that I didn't plan, things that I had no intention of doing, but all of these things turned out to be the right things. And they were showing up, absence of my involvement, absence of my control, absence of me dictating the way they showed up, when they showed up, and how they showed up. And so this pastor made this grand switch and this turn in the way he started to teach. He stopped teaching in the traditional religious form and fashion that I was accustomed to, and he started teaching like you all. And he started sharing things like light and energy and vibration, and the more I began to research it, the more this word in the life of Christ began to illuminate to me in ways that it never had before. And I realized that, I realized that Jesus was one of the most simplistic figures in the world, and we had complicated him so very, very much. Can I talk now? Okay? So you got my lifestyle. It was a mess. I got saved out of that, and here I am today. So now, my conversion. So I began to research the word namaste. I began to research vibration. I began to research energy, and I began to look at Jesus in a whole nother way, and his word in a whole nother way. And there was something very profound that stuck with me in Matthew 6, starting at verse 25. Here you see Jesus say, take no thought of what you will eat or what you will wear or anything, but only seek ye first the kingdom of God first. And so I began to apply that to my life. Early in the morning, I started seeking this divine God, this divine energy, this divine force. And I found out that not only was blue being my favorite color, that I was living out of the blue. See, blue is somewhere second, I think, in the spectrum of color, and it signifies the covering of God over mankind. In fact, I think blue is the only color that's even associated with vibration. But what I found out was when your trust, as we sang that, as we talked about that word for the day, is in God, then you're living out of the blue. Because you're trusting that no matter what comes out of the blue, it's going to be for you. It'll work together for your good because of this divine love. So as I read the scripture in Matthew 6 and getting prepared for this talk, and I hope I'm tying this together, I noticed that Jesus told them 3 to 4 times, different times in that passage between verses 25 and 34, take no thought for yourself. Take no thought for the things that you would be concerned about, like eating, clothing, shelter, fearful things. Take no thought. Only put your focus on the divine love that has gotten you right here. And things begin to waken in me and wake up in me where I realize that no matter what I've been through, I got through. I'm still here today. So no matter what hit me, how it hit me, when it hit me, I was going to make it because this divine love, this divine spark, this divine energy that loves us so much in this pure, unadulterated love will not let you down. It will not fail you. And so even though most of us in here think we have a certain measure of control in our lives, and there's nothing wrong with being prepared and preparing and practicing and trying to set things in place to secure certain things in your life, at the end of the day, you have no control. You have no control. It's all in the hand of the divine. But when you trust the divine, you can assure that what you put out, the universe operates in the law of reciprocity. We learn that now, right? So as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. So should not replace the things in my heart that are fearful, that are negative, that might not ensure the quality of my life with the things that will. And so I began to put one foot of faith in front of the next. And we said things like, we're going to go national. We're going to build this ministry. I am. And I began to use the I am vibration to shed off all the darkness, all the negative, and all of the fear. And it's still a process because sometimes those things that you've practiced for 30 and 40 years of your life will come back to visit. And so we have to do a continual housekeeping. But I am here today to tell you that I'm a product of living out of the blue. I have only expectation of good. I only expect good for myself because I only expect good from you. And whenever I set that as my sight, whenever I set that as my focus, then I seem to have some say-so in the outcome because it all works together for my good. And here I am today. My life is full. I am happy. I need nothing. I have no enemies. Jesus said it best when he said his kingdom was not of this world. Therefore, his servants shouldn't fight. So the minute I took the fight out of everything, I unclenched my fist. Guess what? I found out with an open hand I could receive some stuff. God could put some stuff in that open hand. So I'm living out of the blue. And out of the blue is not a bad way to think or live, because the blue that I'm talking about is the blue that covers us all. And that blue is the divine love of God that woke us all up, got us all on our way, and will get us all to where we're going eventually. So I hope I made sense somewhere in this. And I know I'll end on this. When we let go of our fears, when we let go of our control, And we do as the worship song suggested. When we put our trust in the divine blue of God, all things become possible. And so that is my desire for myself, and it is my desire for all men, not just those here, not just those under the sound of my voice. My desire is that we would all unclench and just live out of the blue. Thank you for having me.
He knocked my shoes off. I think rather than having a meditation, let's give this amazing man our Christ blessing, because what a blessing you are to us. And thank you. I'm so overwhelmed. I'm so moved by your message, your honesty, your vulnerability, for keeping it real, for telling it like it is, and for inspiring us. And so, dear Pastor Daryl Craig, together, we love you, we bless you, we appreciate you, and we behold the Christ in you. We love you. Bless you, my friend. Thank you. Huh? Yes, you